Hey everyone, it's Cara Bradley here for session 2 of Rock Your Yoga Classes. Say less, inspire more, and cue like a master teacher. So I am Cara Bradley. I'm so excited to bring you part 2 of this 4-part online course on YouTube, and we are going to get right to it. I will review a little bit from session 1 in case you haven't had the chance to review, but definitely go back and watch session 1 if you haven't done so. Session 1 was called Traits of a Master Yoga Teacher. We'll review it quickly in a moment. Session 2, what we're doing today, is called the Cueing Template, and that's part 1. Next time, we'll do part 2 of the Cueing Template, and then we'll close it out with session 4, which is called Be a Mental Strength Coach. So my name is Cara Bradley, and I am the founder of Verge Bodymind. I'm actually going to take you on my live cam here so you can actually see that there's a person behind the mic. Just give me one moment. There's my picture, and there I am. So my name is Cara Bradley. I am the founder of Verge Bodymind outside of Philadelphia. We've been in business for 14 years. I've been teaching yoga for over 20. I've been teaching fitness since I was 15 years old. So that is a long, long time. I am passionate about helping yoga teachers learn to cue effectively, efficiently, simply, so that you can offer your students the best experience, the most space, the most profound of themselves in movement, in breath, in stillness, and silence. So here we go into session 2 called the Cueing Template, which is something that's been designed over the years at Verge Bodymind. And you can check us out, vergebodymind.com. I'll send you I'll have some more information at the end of this, but let's get right to it. But right now, I just want to share my screen with you. And why does cueing matter? I talked about it last time, but real quickly, again, it's really, I think, important to understand why cueing matters, because so often I find yoga teachers get so caught up in learning different poses and variations of poses and sequencing of poses that they lose the essence of what they're trying to do as a yoga teacher, which is to facilitate. And in facilitating classes, there is direct communication. Communication is of utmost importance. And that's what I offer you. Just some really effective tips and strategies to communicate effectively. So why does cueing matter? Because at the end of the day, the definition and purpose of yoga, as we know it from the Yoga Sutra, is that yoga is the cessation of the modifications or fluctuations of the mind. It's a very fancy way of saying that yoga is really a way to help us quiet our mind so that we can get to know ourselves in our bodies, in our emotional bodies, through wisdom and insight. So the first thing that we need to do as yoga teachers is to help students quiet their mind. Well, let's back that up just a few steps. How do you quiet the mind? You settle your nervous system. Because your mind, your thoughts are a product of these neurological synapses that we think of as thoughts, right? There are these kind of soap bubbles, if you will, that pop up automatically. We don't control them. We can't stop them. But when we are agitated, when our nervous system is stressed or frazzled, it seems that these soap bubbles come a little bit more fast and frenzied. So when we settle our physiological nervous system through breath, rhythm, and creating space, we can then help our students quiet their mind. It's really simple. It's super simple biology. So if we just can take it from there, knowing that cueing is important because we want to help quiet the minds of our students, and we do that by settling their nervous system. And how do we settle their nervous system? That's part of what we talk about in this Rock Your Classes course. So let's just do a super quick review on what we talked about last time in session 1, the traits of the master yoga teacher. And again, you could always go back and hear my explanations more fully. Common mistakes. Know the common mistakes. They're not your mistakes. They're common mistakes. I've made them. That's how I was able to identify them. Every single teacher I've supported at Verge Bodymind has made these mistakes, right? Still, master teachers still make these mistakes. But getting to know them, it really helps us to cut through it and to disrupt these patterns quickly. So here we go. Too many words, too many words, too many words. We're just talking too much. Not giving enough space, not giving enough silence for students to experience their pose for themselves. Complicated instruction. It takes us too long to explain something very simple. We all do it. And so one of the things that we say in our yoga teacher training program is think about instructing a 4-year-old. How would you get a 4-year-old in triangle pose? You would speak so simply, so directly. And it's not that we're belittling our students by speaking to them like we talk to a 4-year-old. We're just bringing the conversation down to the most essential words necessary. We're becoming very essential and very effective. So losing the complicated instruction. Passive cueing, I talk about it a lot in session 1. Passive cueing is when we're telling our students where their body should be instead of telling their bodies what to do. So knee up, foot forward, arm up, eyes up, as opposed to lift your knee, flex your right toes, reach your right arm up, look up. Very big difference in how your body, how your body accepts or receives those cues. So again, go back to session 1 if you're not sure. 4, no space to integrate. And we'll talk about a little bit of that in the strategies in a moment. You need to give people space to integrate their poses, to actually experience themselves in a bent knee triangle, in a bow pose. Otherwise, it's just you telling them what they should be feeling. And we don't want that. Students will feel a little bit frazzled and not really whole when they leave your class if you don't give them space. Pretty simple. Effective strategies, we talked about this in session 1. Real quick, announce the pose. When you announce the pose before getting into all of the information about a pose, you just tell the students, dancer's pose, reach your left arm up, open up your right hand. You give students license to go there. You give students a mental image of where their body's going to go, and it allows you to say less. It is such a simple and such an effective strategy. Announce the pose first. Use active verbs. This goes back to the common mistake of passive cueing. Try to start every single cue with an active verb. Reach, lunge, lift, lower, engage, release, contract, open. There's a sort of a list there. We have a full list of like 50, 70 active verbs that we use in our YTT. Speak to bodies. You don't want to be speaking to minds. Their minds are busy enough. If you're too complicated and you start telling them all this stuff, in their mind is going to have to decipher what you're saying. Instead, look at the bodies that you're teaching. Look at the left foot that you want to lunge back and just say, lunge your left foot back. Your left foot. Not the or that left foot, your left foot. We want to get as direct, simple, effective as possible. That way our students can quiet their mind and settle down. When they do that, they'll experience themselves more fully in their practice in your class, and they will come back. Lead with the breath. In leading with the breath, you're saying inhale, lift your arms up. Exhale, bow forward. As opposed to lift your arms up, inhale. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not as active, powerful, and direct to the body. So if you can, lead with the breath. Simple breathing, cueing. And lastly, wait. A lot of people love this. Wait. Wait stands for, why am I talking? When you get a student in a pose, and we're going to talk about this more today in the cueing template, as soon as you get a students in a pose, cross your fingers and say, wait. And that's your reminder to stop talking for 2 breaths. So you get them into that seated forward bend, and you cross your fingers, and you zip up, and you give them 2 breaths to experience themselves and their bodies in this moment, in this space. That is our practice. That's where the insight floods through. Okay, lastly from last time, identify weak cueing. Identify your passive cues when you start inging, right? Inging is lifting your right foot up, lowering your left arm down. Instead of lift your right foot up, lower your left arm. So the ings just aren't as active. Notice your repeat words. We all have them. They're so common. They're those fillers. We want to just nix those. We want to get rid of those because that just muddies the water. You want to lose your repeat words. Too much metaphor keeps your student thinking, oh, what does she mean about opening my heart like a butterfly or flapping my wings like an eagle? Now, every once in a while, it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, watch it. Watch you're not doing too much. And then lastly, indirect breathing. Indirect breathing is when you don't breathe actively. So if you look at number 4, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out is not only more wordy, it's not as active. Full breath in, full breath out is not as active. When someone tells you to inhale and you could feel them take an inhale, you're going to inhale. It's automatic. There's no thought. So just try to use that active breathing, cueing as much as possible. In session 1, I talked about some assignments. So I'm just going to remind you, because if you haven't done it, do it. If you really want to take your teaching up to the next level and really take your students for a ride that they will not forget, that they'll want more of next week in your class specifically, you want to record your class. Record it, play it back, listen once for your common mistakes. Go through the list. When you record, practice your effective strategies that we just talked about. So record your class, take your class. Notice, be honest, be kind, be patient to yourself. Have somebody else do this with you, another teacher, and why don't you help each other out? Teamwork. So helpful. All right, let's get on with it. Session 2, the cueing template. As I said before, the cueing template is something that we have designed at Verge Bodymind to help us teach brand new teachers how to move bodies. Okay, this isn't about teaching sutras. This isn't about Sanskrit. It's not about theming your class. It's about moving bodies from point A to point B. So we break it down to the simplest, most direct way of doing it. We call it the primer dialogue. So the cueing template starts with super cues. So if you look at the diagram here, we've got pose 1, pose 2, pose 3. Bring yourself right to super cue there. Super cue is how you move a student into a pose, simply and clearly. So you want to think about, we're going to cut away everything else. How am I moving a student into standing head to knee as simply and as clearly as possible? The exit cues, if you look down on the diagram, you'll see the exit cue at breath 5. And this is just, it's not an exact. The exit cue is how you complete the pose and encourage students to challenge themselves and deepen. We're going to go through these a little more deeply, so I'm just giving you a review. How do I help a student exhale fully and finish that seated head to knee? And then transitional cues. Transitional cues are how do I get students to move from pose 1 to pose 2? So it's the end of pose 1 to the beginning of pose 2. And please, this is not an exact science. This puzzle, this grid is not a perfect thing. There's a blur. Allow it to be a little blurry, but it really does help a brand new teacher and an experienced teacher to understand, how am I transitioning students? Am I doing it effectively? Am I talking too much? How can I get students from pose 1 to pose 2 quickly, effectively, so that I can get them into pose 2 and give them more of an experience? So transitional would be, how do I get students from wide angle up and then into warrior, to the beginning of warrior 2? So let's go back. We'll take this a little bit deeper. Support cues. Support cues, my bad. Support cues are what we're going to talk about in next session, but I want to just introduce them here. Support cues is what you say during the belly of a pose. So say you're in eagle pose and you get the students in eagle pose. What's happening from the first breath until the last breath of that eagle pose? What are you saying? You can say nothing. You can give them silence, right? You can give them some mental support. You can breathe them. You can see this on the list if you're not following my list here. You can give them physical support or a personal experience. We're going to pause on the support cues and we'll talk about next week or next session. So this is the cueing template. How to get a student from one pose to the next, how to get them in the next pose, what do you say during the pose, how to exit them so they're challenging themselves, and then how to get them out and into the next pose, pose 3. All right, so that is the summary. Let's dive in a little bit more, and then I've got a video for you to watch so you can get a good idea of what I'm talking about. Once again, super cues moves students into pose simply and clearly. They're macro cues to move body limbs. So these are big cues, folks. They're simple, short, and in command form. Again, you're talking to the 4-year-old. You're trying to help the 4-year-old understand exactly how to move into standing head to knee. And you also want to offer some space in between cues to allow people to drop into that cue. I'll tell you what that means in a sec. So let's look at standing head to knee. Here's my super cues. Your feet are set up already from the transition. Raise your arms overhead and interlock your fingers. Extend your pointer fingers. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, dome your spine and aim your forehead to your knee. Release your hands to the floor. And it's at that point, number 5, I would cross my fingers and say, wait. Do not speak. Let the student kind of shimmy into the pose. So in 5 cues, I was able to get the students in. Now, I'm not telling you how to cue or what to say, right? You may take students in differently. This is not about teaching you asana, right? This is just giving you some tips on how to use what you usually say more effectively. Exit cue, again, is a simple way to complete a pose, encourages students to challenge or go deeper. Exit cues will cue your students to shift into a more challenging place. I like to call it the edge, right? The edge of the pose, the boundary of what you think you can do. It's usually guided with breath, and it caps or completes the pose. At Verge Body Mind, we all do this. So when a teacher doesn't use an exit cue, it's often, you kind of feel like you're left hanging at the end of a pose. Now, listen, you don't have to do it for every single pose. And there are some poses that really lend themselves to a good, strong exit cue. But when you do them enough, you're going to help your students go past the place where they think they can go. And when you do that, and when they experience themselves in a different place, they will feel more alive. They will feel more successful, and they will come back to your class. So the exit cues as well allow students to just deepen and surrender, to let go, to allow. So here's an example of exit cue in seated head to knee. Take a final breath in. Exhale fully and press your forehead to your knee. Inhale, final breath. This is a different type of exit cue. Exhale, relax fully and deepen into the pose. Or final breath, inhale, exhale, take it to your furthest point. So just 3 ways I say it and mix it up. You'll have your own. You don't need to use mine. Transitional cues, once again, simple direction to move student from the end of one pose to the beginning of the next. Now remember, it's kind of blurry. We're going to take a student from wide angle to warrior 2. So let me just back up. The transitional pose safely moves students from one pose to another. They're clear, simple steps to move limbs. Your voice is steady and strong. And the example is just step to the front of your mat and bring your toes together. Right? That's setting up a student for mountain pose, perhaps. So that's our session 2. That's the cueing template. Let's go on now and watch a video. And in the video, you're going to, it's not perfect. Like I said, the lines get blurry between the transition and the super cues, but it doesn't matter. And just sit back. It's about 4 minutes long. Sit back and notice the types of cues. And I believe in this video, I don't say very much during the pose. So there aren't any support cues. We'll get to that next.
Okay, so the next 2 poses, I'm going to focus on announcing the pose, keeping it very simple, and speaking in active cues. So you could either do this with me, or you can just watch and absorb the cueing, which is something we don't often get to do when we're practicing or teaching. Eagle pose. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, bend your knees and pause. Lock your core. Breathe in, reach through your fingers. As you exhale, wrap your right arm under your left and lift your right leg up and over. Set your gaze. Find your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Settle into your hips. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Take 2 more on your own. Final breath. Exhale, settle in fully and pause. Inhale, sweep your arms overhead, other side. Bend your knees, sweep your left arm under your right, lift your left leg up and over. Set your gaze. Find your breath. Squeeze your knees and elbows together to help you stabilize here. Final breath. Sink in a little further. Release. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, arms by your side. Dancer's pose. Take your left arm high. Reach your right palm open. Grab the inside of your right foot. Now stand tall. Inhale, reach your left arm up. Exhale, kick your right foot back. Pause and breathe. Steady your focus to help steady your body. Now step in for your final breath. Kick back, lift your toes up. Bring your knees together. Pause and release. Reverse your arms. Sweep your left arm back, reach your right arm high. Grab the inside of your left foot. Stand tall. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, kick your left foot back as you tip forward. Keep pressing your left foot back into your hands. Reach your right finger forward. Take one more breath, step in fully, and release. Knees together, reach up. Release your arms by your side and pause. So that was super simple cueing. Allow your students to get into the pose, pause. Cross your fingers, wait. Why am I talking? Give them a few moments to settle into the pose. And then you can fill in the belly of the pose with a mental cue, a physical cue. Finishing up with an exit cue, and you're on to the other side. Announce the pose first. Keep it simple. Speak in with active verbs. It's going to really help to clean up your dialogue.
All right. So we are back. That, and we're able to really see how simple it can be. So your session 2 assignments, you've got 3 of them, by the way. Record your class again. Start to listen for your super cues. Notice, am I using super cues? Where are my exit cues? How are my transitional cues? Am I just spending too much time transitioning? I said to a new teacher the other day, just starting out with us, she did a super job, but I told her, I said, you're spending a lot of time in transition and not enough time actually offering us space in the pose itself. So, a class can become very laborious for a student when there's a lot of time spent just transitioning from one pose to the next. So I would say for you all, especially if you're new to Verge Body Mind and the way that we teach classes, is to focus on your transitional cues for a bit. Really clean those up, and then the others will fall in line. The second assignment is to write out a 5-pose sequence. We do this in our YTT. That will take 5 poses, just throw them out. And now write down your super cues to get students in, what you would say to get them out, and how you would transition them to the next pose. It's a really, really great tool. Lastly, I just encourage you to take time for stillness before you teach. A little stillness, a little silence stabilizes your nervous system, quiets your mind, so that when you step in front of the class and ring that bell, you're more steady and clear. You're more open to being so simple. And in so doing, you're going to help your students settle down as well. So as I said last time in session 1, I am available for additional support. If you're interested, I've got cueing sessions, coaching cueing sessions, 30-minute call. You can send me a recording and I will listen to your recording and we can talk about it. I'll give you some recommendations. So maybe even just one session, 1 or 2 sessions may help you really amp up your classes. So I am available. I will put a link in the YouTube description. You can get to my website and look more into that. Again, I am Cara Bradley, and I have a book out on the market called On The Verge, Wake Up, Show Up, and Shine. And it is about being present. It is about leaning in. It is about showing up and accessing your fullest potential, one practice at a time, one breath at a time. So check that out. And I also have an accompanying app, which is free. And my app has 3 videos on it. So it has some yoga and some mindful movement, plus a slew of audio practices I call them primer practices. They're fantastic mindfulness activities. So you can find the app on the App Store or Google Play. I also have a podcast, my absolutely most fun thing I do every week, called On The Verge. You can find that, and they're just weekly 15-minute blasts of insight of whatever it is I'm working on in my own life. So one of my absolutely favorite things, like I said, to do every week. And lastly, if you want to find out more about Verge Body Mind, we have on-demand classes. You can check us out, vergebodiemind.com. So thank you once again. My info is here. You can follow me on social media. Email me at cara@carabradley.net. Let me know how you're liking this, if you have questions, if you'd like more on a certain subject. And I'm so happy to engage with you. So great to be here with you all. Go out there and shine. Deliver big, everyone. The world needs you as a yoga teacher, as a really masterful yoga teacher. So thank you for all that you do. And we will see you in session 3.